The group of young men didn't just block the alley. They fed off one another's energy, their laughter echoing off the damp brick walls like the sound of broken glass. One flicked his cigarette onto the ground, its ember hissing in the drizzle, while another cracked his knuckles with exaggerated menace. Amara could feel the weight of their stares crawling over her skin, sharp and mocking, like invisible claws. She wanted to tell herself she was imagining the threat, that maybe they were just being loud and stupid, but the way they spread out across the narrow space told her otherwise. They weren't going to let her slip past easily. Her chest tightened, her breath catching as though her lungs had turned to stone. Jasper sensed it before she even flinched. The shepherd's ears stood erect, his head slightly lowered, shoulders squared like a soldier preparing for battle. His tail was stiff, the kind of posture Amara had seen during training sessions when he locked onto a target. Beside her, Luna pressed closer, her warm body anchoring Amara in place. The Labrador's usual softness had sharpened. Her eyes were no longer gentle pools of honey but sharp, alert beacons tracking every twitch from the boys. Amara had trained them for situations where she might panic in crowds, where her body betrayed her in storms of anxiety, but she had never truly imagined them standing between her and human malice. The hooligans began their taunts in earnest. Ugly words spat into the drizzle like venom. One called her easy prey, another laughed and muttered a slur that sliced deeper than the cold rain ever could. Amara gripped the strap of her backpack so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to move, to speak, to do anything but stand frozen, yet her legs refused to obey. The alley seemed to shrink, the exit behind the boys growing impossibly far away. Their ringleader, a tall one with a scar cutting through his eyebrow, took a bold step forward, puffing his chest as if to prove he owned the night. His voice dripped with mockery as he leaned closer, testing how close he could get before she broke. But Jasper moved first. The shepherd surged a single step ahead, his body taut as steel, and loosed a bark that tore through the alley like thunder. It wasn't just sound. It was force, power that reverberated in Amara's bones and made the air itself vibrate. The boys jolted, their bravado flickering, laughter dying in their throats. Luna followed, her lips curling back to reveal sharp white teeth, a guttural growl spilling out of her throat like rolling storm clouds. For the first time, the balance shifted. It was no longer Amara standing small before a pack of predators. It was them standing before two guardians who saw them for what they were, threats to be neutralized. The scarred boy faltered mid-step, his sneakers scuffing against the wet pavement. His friends exchanged uneasy glances, the swagger in their shoulders softening into hesitation. None of them had expected resistance, not from her, and certainly not from the dogs who stood like sentinels carved from stone. The alley filled with silence, broken only by the low, steady growls that warned of teeth and loyalty, of danger lying in wait should they take one step too far. Amara's pulse was a frantic drumbeat, yet for the first time since she'd seen the gang emerge from the shadows, she felt a flicker of safety. Her fear didn't vanish, but it bent, reshaped by the presence of Jasper and Luna. They weren't just service animals, they were warriors, and in that moment, they had drawn a line no hooligan dared to cross. The drizzle thickened into a mist that clung to Amara's skin, making the night feel colder, heavier. The boys' laughter turned crueler with each echo, their voices bouncing off the brick walls and amplifying the threat. One dragged his shoe across the pavement, a screeching sound like nails on glass, as though daring her to move. Another spat on the ground near her feet, the act as sharp as a slap across the face. Amara's throat tightened, her breath uneven. She wanted to keep walking, to pretend they weren't there, but her instincts screamed danger. She gripped her backpack so hard her shoulder ached, wishing she could disappear into the rain. Jasper stepped slightly forward, his body a wall of muscle and discipline. The German shepherd's silhouette loomed larger under the flickering street lamp, his amber eyes fixed on the group with a sharpness that made even the boldest of them falter. His tail was rigid, not wagging in play, but poised like a sword ready to strike. The low rumble in his chest vibrated through the air, an ancient warning that needed no translation. Luna pressed against Amara's thigh, grounding her trembling body. The Labrador's ears were pinned back, her teeth glinting in the dim light, her growl softer but no less menacing. Together, they radiated a presence that changed the air around them, an unspoken promise that harm would not go unanswered. The ringleader, tall and broad with his scarred eyebrow, sneered as if to shake off the unease creeping into his posture. "What's a girl like you doing out here alone?" he jeered, his tone deliberately cruel. The others chuckled, but it was weaker now, a little forced. One of them nudged his friend, whispering something too low for Amara to hear, though she caught the edge of nervousness in his voice. Still, the leader advanced a step closer, pretending confidence he no longer fully owned. Amara's knees locked, her body frozen, but Jasper's bark exploded into the night before she could crumble. It was so loud, so commanding, that it seemed to shake the walls themselves. The sound startled birds from a nearby rooftop, their wings beating frantically into the mist. The hooligans flinched, shoulders jerking as though struck by the force of it. Luna's growl deepened, her stance widening protectively in front of Amara, her golden fur bristling like a halo of fire in the glow of the street lamp. The leader hesitated, his smirk slipping. He raised his hand slightly, mocking at first, but betraying the crack in his bravado. His friends shuffled uneasily, their earlier arrogance now clouded by doubt. For the first time, Amara saw them not as untouchable predators, but as boys caught off guard, suddenly aware that they had underestimated her guardians. The alley, once suffocating, now seemed charged with new energy. Not just fear, but the electric tension of a battle line drawn. Amara's chest still heaved with terror, but behind that fear, a fragile spark of hope flickered. She wasn't standing alone anymore. The standoff stretched with a weight that made every second feel like an eternity. The drizzle pattered against the pavement, hissing softly where it touched old cigarette butts and puddles of oil. Amara's pulse thundered in her ears, her body locked in place, but Jasper and Luna were statues of defiance. Jasper's eyes never wavered, pinning each boy as though measuring them, deciding which one would dare to test him first. His growl wasn't constant. It rose and fell in a rhythm that promised he was holding back a storm. Luna stood firm at Amara's knee, a golden shield of muscle and fur, her teeth flashing white whenever one of the hooligans twitched too suddenly. The tall boy with the scar tried to recover his composure. "They're just dogs," he spat, but his voice didn't carry the conviction it had before. His attempt at swagger came out shaky, his steps faltering as if his feet were reconsidering each move. One of his friends muttered, "Man, look at that shepherd's eyes, he ain't playing." Another shifted nervously from one foot to the other, his earlier bravado cracking into restless glances toward the exit. The false confidence that had bound them together began to unravel thread by thread. They had expected an easy moment of intimidation, but what they'd found was something primal and unyielding staring back at them. Jasper's bark shattered the silence again, louder this time, deeper, and filled with a force that rolled through the alley like thunder across a canyon. The sound cut through the group, leaving no space for laughter. Luna joined in, not barking, but snapping her teeth together with a sharp, audible click that made one of the boys stumble backward with a startled curse. The air grew electric, tense and dangerous, and in that tension the power dynamic shifted completely. Amara, though still trembling, could sense it. The boys were no longer hunters circling prey. They were intruders trespassing on guarded ground. One of the younger-looking ones tugged at the leader's sleeve, his voice almost a whisper. "Forget it, man. They'll rip us up." His words weren't meant for Amara to hear, but the alley carried every syllable. The leader jerked his arm free, but his eyes betrayed his own uncertainty. He tried to sneer again, tried to mask the fear flickering in the corners of his expression, yet Jasper's unwavering stare made his effort hollow. Amara's own breathing slowed slightly, though her body still shook. A strange steadiness crept into her as she realized she wasn't as powerless as she thought. She had her guardians, and they were enough to turn the tide. The dogs didn't flinch, didn't retreat, didn't even blink under the pressure. They embodied everything she wished she could be in that moment, unafraid, unbroken, defiant. Finally, one of the boys swore under his breath and took a step back toward the mouth of the alley. Another followed, his hood pulled lower as though he didn't want to be seen anymore. The leader's jaw tightened, but when Jasper took one more slow, deliberate step forward, his growl reverberating like distant thunder, even the scarred boy froze. For the first time that night, silence fell not from intimidation directed at Amara, but from the boys' growing awareness that they had lost control of the moment. They were the ones cornered now, trapped between their pride and the sharp reality of fangs waiting in the dark. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by the rain dripping from a sagging gutter and the low rumble of Jasper's chest. The boys shifted uneasily, their bravado unraveling in the face of two animals that showed no hesitation, no weakness, only raw loyalty and instinct sharpened by training. Amara could see it in their eyes now. The swagger had drained away, replaced with darting glances and clenched jaws. The leader, the one with the scar over his brow, tried one last time to salvage his pride. He puffed up his chest and forced a smirk, but his voice betrayed him when he muttered, "They're just bluffing. Dogs know when you're scared." He stepped forward half a pace, testing the tension like someone foolish enough to poke at fire. Jasper didn't bark this time. He simply lowered his head, shoulders rippling with coiled strength, and fixed the boy with a stare so steady it was like staring into the barrel of a gun. The growl that followed was slow, deliberate, vibrating deep enough that it felt like the ground itself was trembling. Luna mirrored him, her body lowering protectively across Amara's legs, lips peeled back in a snarl that revealed every sharp edge of her teeth. Her golden fur bristled, droplets of rain clinging to her coat, making her look like a creature forged from light and fury. The alley seemed to close in around them, the air electric and sharp with the promise of violence. One of the boys broke first. "Nah, man, I'm not doing this," he muttered, backing away with his palms up. His sneakers slapped against the wet concrete, and he didn't look back. Another followed, then another, each peeling off from the group with muttered curses and uneasy glances at the dogs. The leader was left with only two behind him, and even they were wavering, their shoulders tense, eyes shifting between him and the way out. The scarred boy clenched his fists, teeth grinding as if he could will his courage back, but Jasper's steady advance, just a single, deliberate step forward, stripped that illusion away. Amara stood frozen, watching the scene tilt in her favor, hardly believing what she was seeing. For a moment, she wasn't the girl cornered in an alley. She was the one shielded by power greater than any threat before her. Her chest loosened, breath flowing a little easier, though her legs still trembled beneath her. Jasper stopped moving once the boys retreated further, but his growl never ceased, warning them that the line was drawn and could not be crossed. Luna gave a sharp, snapping bark that cracked through the night like a whip, and that was enough to shatter what was left of the leader's resolve. He spat onto the ground, trying to save face, but his voice cracked when he muttered, "Not worth it." He shot Amara a look meant to intimidate, but it was hollow now, stripped of the edge it once carried. With a sharp jerk of his head, he turned, shoving his hands deep into his hoodie pocket as he stalked out of the alley. The last two trailed behind him quickly, one muttering under his breath, the other keeping his eyes fixed firmly on the ground. Their footsteps faded into the night, swallowed by the rain and distance, leaving behind only the echo of their failed menace. Amara stood in the middle of the alley, shaking from head to toe, her body flooded with adrenaline and disbelief. Her dogs didn't move until the last shadow had vanished. Jasper finally lifted his head, his ears twitching, scanning the dark to ensure no threat lingered. Luna pressed closer against Amara's legs, her growl fading into a soft whine, as if asking if she was all right. For the first time that night, Amara let out the breath she had been holding, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. The danger had passed, but the power of what had just happened would not leave her easily. Amara's legs gave out as soon as the last trace of their footsteps disappeared. She stumbled to the side and sank down onto the cold, wet pavement, her hands trembling so violently that she could barely clutch the strap of her backpack. The rain slid down her face, mixing with the tears that poured unchecked from her eyes. Every nerve in her body buzzed with the aftershock of fear, her heart still pounding, her chest aching as if she had been running for miles though she hadn't moved at all. She pressed her palms against the ground, grounding herself, but her sobs broke free in ragged gasps. The alley that had moments ago been a cage now felt like a graveyard of shadows and echoes. Jasper immediately shifted back to her side, his massive body lowering until his broad chest pressed gently against her knees. He nuzzled her with his nose, a soft contrast to the powerful figure that had terrified the hooligans just minutes before. His golden eyes searched her face, patient and unwavering, as if to remind her that he was still here, still hers, still unshaken. Luna leaned fully into her lap, pressing her warm weight against Amara's trembling frame. She licked the tears from Amara's cheeks, her soft whine carrying a tenderness that melted through the fear and steadied the chaos in her heart. Amara wrapped her arms around Luna's neck, burying her face in the Labrador's damp fur. The scent of rain and earth clung to her coat, grounding her in the present moment. Jasper shifted closer, so close that his steady heartbeat thudded against her own rapid pulse. Surrounded by their warmth, Amara felt the sharpness of her terror dull, replaced by something deeper, a fragile but powerful sense of safety. She whispered through her tears, broken words of gratitude, her voice trembling. Thank you, my brave babies. You saved me." Her voice cracked, but her grip on them tightened as though she would never let go. The rain continued to fall, seeping into her clothes, chilling her to the bone, but she barely noticed. She sat there between them, breathing in their presence, feeling her body slowly begin to unclench. The alley was still dim, still damp, but it no longer belonged to fear. It belonged to her and the two guardians who had transformed it from a trap into proof of her survival. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the scarred boy's faltering smirk, the way his friends had stumbled back in shock, and the sight of Jasper and Luna holding the line with unshakable loyalty. That image became a shield inside her, one she knew she would carry long after the night had ended. Her sobs softened into quiet hiccups, and she lifted her head to meet Jasper's gaze. His ears twitched, water dripping from their tips, but his eyes glowed steady as firelight in the gloom. Luna pressed her head into Amara's chest, as if urging her to stand, to move forward. Slowly, shakily, Amara nodded. Her voice a whisper meant more for herself than for anyone else. "I can do this. I can walk home. We're okay." The words weren't steady, but they were real, and with the dogs at her sides, she believed them.